Hey, so I'm gonna make a quick video here. Well, hopefully it's a quick video, or else I keep saying that. But what is so? You were asking about, or at least some of you were asking about the difference between a two-stage trigger box and a one-stage trigger box. So the only difference between the two is a two-stage trigger box has the semi-auto sear, the spring, and the kind of like trigger arm is it's an extension in a sense to the semi-auto sear. And if you remove these technically three components, it will make it a one-stage setup. So I'm going to put these to the side. So what I have here is I have a stock Togemori trigger box up top, and then I have a Guns modified trigger box set up to one stage, and of course the Togemori one is set up for two stage. So the difference here, right, is where the hammer will lean against and will stay on until the trigger is pulled, right? So hopefully none of this flies out while I try to make this video. I have disassembled both trigger boxes to kind of showcase the internal process of how this works. So here I'm going to try to rotate this slowly, and as you see that the semi-auto sear is installed, and then also the trigger arm, right? So in this case, so when the hammer is pushed down, right? Now I'm going to put my thumb here so the spring doesn't fly out. When I put it down, you're going to hear one click, and that's the disconnector latching on into the hammer. And then once it's pushed down further, you'll hear a second click. That's the auto sear holding the hammer down, as you see, right? And then since imagine the bolt is on top, cycled forward, that means it will push this auto sear down, right? And then it will release, the auto sear will release the hammer, and then now it will lean on the semi-auto sear. See? So hopefully you can kind of see it there. The hammer is leaning against the semi-auto sear. And then also, it's not really leaning, but it's sitting perfect with the trigger. The hammer is sitting in this triangular spot with the trigger. I don't think it's particularly leaning there, but that also will benefit, if I remember correctly, when you're holding the trigger and then it cycles and then you slowly release it. It should still catch to the semi-auto sear, but it can also catch here potentially. So in this case, well, I mean, kind of scratch all that shit. So primarily the hammer, when it's down, it's held down by the semi-auto sear. The only way you can release it, a hammer to move up, is, so we're going to flip it over, is you see this little triangular piece? This triangular piece is part of the semi-auto sear that is holding down the trigger. And this trigger arm, this little hole, this is a pin from the trigger itself. So when the trigger is moving back, it is sending this arm up, and it's kind of curved here. It will press against this semi-auto sear and push it to the right. It will swing counterclockwise from this pin, right? So when I pull the trigger, hopefully I don't have any springs fly. Pull the trigger, should release the hammer. See? And as you saw, the trigger arm was pushing against the semi-auto sear. The semi-auto sear released the hammer, and the hammer went up. Right? So that's basically how a two-stage is set up, and there is some leeway. And the leeway is mostly because the hammer is not actually leaning against the trigger. So when you pull it, as you can see here, there's a little bit of room, right? So this is the stock and two-stage setup. So I'm going to push this, then release the hammer, right? So that's two-stage. One stage. So this is a reminder, this is a Guns modified one. So in this case, this does not have the trigger arm, right? That's attached to the trigger, and it does not have the semi-auto sear. It only has the auto sear. Okay. make sure these springs stay in place. So when you push the hammer down, I'm going to try to hold my best here. It's going to catch under the auto sear first, as you can see here, right? And then as you can see also the trigger's kind of pushed back, but realistically when it's in the trigger box it should be sitting somewhere around here, right? And then since the BCG is going to be cycled forward, that means this auto sear will be pushed down, right? See, and now the hammer is slightly released. The auto sear is not holding against the hammer anymore. Now is primarily leaning against the trigger. Before, with the two-stage, right? One, there we go, two. There's a little bit of wiggle room. That's because the hammer is not leaning against the trigger itself. It's leaning against the semi-auto sear. One stage is leaning on the trigger itself. As you can see, putting a little bit of pressure, trying to cover the springs from doing anything. See, nothing. And then, so when you pull the trigger, it should pull the hammer down a little bit, since how it's swinging to the trigger swinging clockwise in this viewpoint. And then it should release the hammer, right? So we'll do it again, push these springs in. So I'm going to leave that open. There you go, under the auto sear, release the auto sear, right? There you go. Push this trigger up a bit. Then when you pull the trigger, it should release the hammer from that point. There you go. See? There you go, that's a quick video. Hopefully I explained it well enough that you guys can kind of imagine in your brain. It did take me a while to understand it. It's a tough mechanism, I can tell you first. It's definitely very different from real steel to VFC to GHK. So if you have any questions, let me know.